All right, let's jump right into this. Today, we're unpacking an incredible blueprint drawn from Alex, and we're going to trace the entire transition from everyday money realities all the way up to the absolute global benchmarks of the ultra wealthy. We are essentially climbing the wealth building ladder together, figuring out exactly how capital, mindset, and luxury intersect in today's wild economy. Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Global costs and changing classes. 2. Mindsets for future billionaires. 3. Blueprints for building wealth. 4. The prime real estate market. And finally, 5. Inside the luxury lifestyle. Let's do it. Section 1. Global costs and changing classes. So, to truly wrap our heads around global wealth, we actually need to look at something totally mundane, like a haircut. Look at the absolute stark contrast in these everyday costs around the globe. In Oslo, Norway, a standard men's haircut is going to set you back almost 65 bucks. But if you travel down to Lusaka, Zambia, that exact same service is $1.65. It's wild, right? This massive disparity really highlights how geography fundamentally dictates your baseline economic reality. Your starting line for building wealth is just vastly different, depending purely on your coordinates on the map. And, those geographical pressures feed directly into a much larger economic divide. Take a really close look at this profound observation from the source material, because this is absolutely crucial. The middle class. It is no longer a single unified group. It's completely splitting into two entirely distinct groups, renters and owners. And we really need to focus on this because it has a massive defining effect on overall net worth. Think about it. If you're renting, your biggest monthly expense is actively paying down someone else's mortgage, meaning you are highly exposed to inflation. But if you're an owner, that exact same monthly expense acts like a forced savings account. You're building equity that appreciates over time. This one single divergence, owning versus renting, is actively exploding the net worth of one half of the middle class while literally stalling the other. It's a fundamental shift in how everyday wealth is accumulated today. Moving on to Section 2, Mindsets for Future Billionaires. Now notice the clear juxtaposition between the past and the future here. On the left, we've got those everyday traps, right? The unconscious money habits that keep people anchored down, things like consumer debt or lifestyle creep. But look at the right side. The focus completely shifts forward. The wealthy aren't just reacting to what's happening today, they're actively cultivating the habits they're going to need in 2026 and way beyond. Building real wealth requires a fiercely future-focused mentality. You really have to skate to where the puck is going, not where it is right now. And anticipating those massive cultural trends is exactly what the wealthy do best. I found this particular insight super fascinating. Video games IP is the new comic book IP. Just think about how comic book intellectual properties, Marvel, DC, how they just dominated the box office and merchandise for the last 20 years. The mindset of a future millionaire involves recognizing that video game narratives and their characters are the next massive gold rush for media and investment. It's all about seeing that cultural shift before the mainstream even catches on. But hey, you don't have to figure all these trends out entirely on your own. The source material highlights this incredibly simple but brilliant prompt. Men under 35 ask a question, and men over 35 answer it. What a beautiful way to leverage cross-generational knowledge transfer. Whether you're navigating your very first business or trying to figure out weird market cycles, somebody else has already walked that path. Leveraging the experience of folks who are further up the ladder is an absolutely essential habit for success. Section 3, Blueprints for Building Wealth. Okay, so building wealth requires an incredibly strategic focus. Look at these 3 core pillars we pulled from the source. First, you've got to identify profitable side hustles designed for the future economy. Second, you need to position yourself in the specific industries that actually mint millionaires. Basically, you got to fish where the fish are. And third, and this might be the most crucial realization, your first $100,000, it isn't actually about the money. Generating that initial capital is a psychological hurdle. It's really about proving to yourself that you possess the discipline, the systems, and the relentless consistency needed to generate value completely from scratch. And that wealth generation follows a very, very clear progression. Step 1 is defensive. You have to acknowledge the brutal truths of the world and just kind of shed your naivety. Step 2 is offensive, learning the crucial practical mechanics of actually starting and running a business. But step 3 is where you cross the threshold into high-level wealth. Once you've built a solid asset base, and remember what we said earlier about owners versus renters, the ultra-wealthy don't sell those assets. Actually, scratch that. They don't just hold them either. they leverage them. Learning how the rich live on loans, literally borrowing against their own portfolios to fund their lifestyles without triggering massive tax events, that is an incredibly advanced, totally vital blueprint for generational wealth. Which brings us to Section 4, the prime real estate market. Now, to put things into perspective, let's look at how far $1 million actually goes in the prime market. In Monaco, which is one of the most concentrated hubs of wealth on the planet, $1 million buys you a mere 16 square meters. That is basically the size of a large bedroom. In New York, you get 34 square meters, but over in Mumbai, you get 103. This perfectly visualizes the intense premium placed on geography, security, and exclusivity by the global elite. When wealth scales up, the desire for hyper-prime, finite real estate absolutely skyrockets. And finally, Section 5, inside the luxury lifestyle. You know, when you reach the highest echelon of wealth, money transforms from a utility into a tool for curating passion and legacy. $21 million. That staggering number represents the value of a single, meticulously curated private wine collection featured in our source material. So this isn't just about having a nice drink with dinner. It's about acquiring history, preserving craftsmanship, and holding tangible alternative assets that the rest of the world literally rarely even gets to see. And that scale of wealth extends right into experiential luxury too. $15,000. That is the nightly cost to stay at the #1 hotel in the world. When everyday economic worries are completely removed from the equation, the wealthy gladly pay an extraordinary premium for absolute privacy, flawless service, and environments that are just meticulously engineered to provide absolute perfection. This lifestyle is ultimately defined by exquisite experiences. It's following luxury guides through the high-fashion streets of Milan, absorbing the classical majesty of Vienna, and exploring the ancient echoes of Rome. It's having the elite access to walk through a 9th-generation Italian winery, tasting a product refined over centuries by the exact same bloodline. At the very top of the economic ladder, wealth affords you the ability to interact with the absolute highest tier of human craftsmanship and culture. It's a whole different world. Wow, we've covered some incredible ground today in this explainer, from the baseline costs of a haircut all the way up to $21 million wine cellars. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a direct challenge derived straight from our source. Ask yourself right now, which success rules that no longer work are still holding you back? The middle class is actively splitting, and the blueprints of yesterday simply won't build the empires of tomorrow. It is time to shed those outdated habits. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.